Morning. So we left off yesterday at chapter 45, division of the land. I'm just going to say a little something about what's going on in Washington, D.C., and then I'm going to let it go. It's wrong. It's dead wrong. This is one individual trying to steal the American dream from a lot of people, from everybody else. Apparently they're pulling the homeless out of their tents and just kind of kicking them out of the tents and doing away with them. The problem is that's not helping them. Just because you don't like the way the problem looks, find out the underlying reason as to why are they homeless in the first place. Is it just a financial problem, or is it that there are, as so many of our veterans have experienced, some sort of a mental or emotional problem that has led them into this homelessness? We really need to kind of evaluate things instead of assuming that we get to just go in and clean an area out. They're still human beings, and they still deserve to be treated like human beings, and God still expects you to treat them like human beings. So we need to do better. Just because someone else is driving around in his limo and with billions and millions and stuff of that nature, dollars, and sees this and it disturbs him, well, then that's not really the homeless people's problem. He doesn't like the way it looks. I get it. The thing is the homeless people don't like the way it looks. If you honestly think that they are homeless because they choose to be or they want to be, you really have no idea about the human spirit. And just making the decision to go in and throw people out, continuing to kidnap people with these thugs that are going in wearing masks and arresting people, snatching people off the streets, beating the crap out of people and abusing them. That's not okay. That's never been okay. This is still the United States, and there are still laws that save people from illegal searches and seizures, and he's about to cost this country an exorbitant amount of money, and I honestly feel as though it should come out of his bank. It should come out of his wallet, because these are his problems, his hatreds, his anger, his bigotries. All of the lawsuits that are about to be brought against this nation because of the illegal searches, seizures, treatments, the violations of personal property and of personal being, we have not even begun to see the end of all of the lawsuits that are going to come at us. And it should be him and his administration and anybody that supported and allowed him to do this that is having to foot the bill. It should not be the taxpayers that have to foot this bill. We shouldn't have to foot the bill for him going to play golf. We shouldn't have to foot the bill for him going up to kowtow to stinking Putin. And yet here we are. The taxpayers are paying for it. We shouldn't have to foot the bill for the vice president to have the water raised so he can kayak. And I don't care how many times you say, oh, well, this was done for security and nobody checked with him. No, it should not work that way. That's no excuse. You find out when you are in a place of power and that high a level of prestige and money, then you better be searching it. You better be finding it out, seeking out that truth. Because that's just not right. It's not okay. The taxpayers just had to pay for that. We're not winning anything here. And the only ones that they're saving any money are the ones that don't need to save it. They've already got it hoarded. So just, pray for some level of peace. And, Zelensky is on his way, apparently, to have another conversation. And I pray for him so much, because the Ukrainian people don't deserve this. They never did. And not just as our government, but as a people, we should be supporting the Ukrainians and their democracy and their fight for democracy. And at the moment, the democracy of America, of the United States, I should say, is leaderless. Because our president does not want democracy. He wants to be an authoritarian. He looks at this as though he's never going to die. So he's just going to do whatever he wants. And he is violating the White House with all of these changes that he is making to it. The reason it was always such a plain and simple house was because it was to represent the people of America. It was not meant to represent a monarchy. It was not meant to represent a well-off, wealthy class of individuals. It was meant to represent the average American. And the average American does not have opulence. They don't have ballrooms. They don't have everything lined in gaudy, glittery gold. The average citizen has a colonial type of home. They have a very, I hate to use the word simplistic, but they don't have these homes that are opulent and magnificent. This is not, they're not mansion-esque houses. This is not a kingdom. America was never founded as a kingdom. It was never founded as a dictatorship. It was always meant to be that we were represented in Washington by other people that were supposed to be like us, that were supposed to understand what the average American went through. And as the years have gone by, we've lost that connection, not just with the president, but with the judicial system, with our congressional branches. We have just lost all of it. As a citizen, I would love to be able to see more people like the average United States citizen put into office so that they actually understand and represent the average citizen and taxpayer. As it is right now, you have people that are sitting in there that represent CEOs and bankers more than you have representing the average citizen. And that is a problem. That's what's led to this monstrosity of a presidency that is trying to steal democracy. So, the only thing that we can actually do is continue to resist. But as Christians, pray that God's will is going to come about. Now, as I said, God's not political. God doesn't do politics, and I would say, and there are other varying opinions in the religious world, but I do not believe that Jesus was a political individual. I believe that Jesus dealt with politics because politics dealt with Jesus. Which is pretty much the way that we have to deal with it today as an average individual. We deal with politics because politics deal with us. But I will continue to say that God does not look at whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, a conservative or a progressive. God is not looking at those things. God's not looking at whether you're an independent or, God's not looking at those things. God's looking at your heart and your soul. And we are all God's creation. And God is working to save the souls of all of creation. So, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, God is working to save your soul. Whether you're a Russian or a Gazan, God is working to save your soul. Whether you are an Indian or a Native American, God is working to save your soul. And that was the ultimate job of Christ, coming to save and bring all of us into a point of repentance with God so that we can actually get to the foot of the throne. Jesus came to be that cross, to bridge that divide between us and God. And Jesus wasn't being particular. Jesus sent the apostles out to all mankind, not just to the Jews. So, we need to get some things, fundamental things, straight. The other thing is, and I know I've said it before, but if you don't like history good, you're not supposed to. Not the ugly parts anyway. You're not supposed to feel good about the ugly parts of it. And the ugly parts aren't there to make you feel good about yourself or your heritage. Those ugly parts of history are there to remind you what we don't want to do again. So instead of going through the Smithsonian and whitewashing it and trying to make it more presentable and pleasing to your race, maybe do something intelligent and learn from it. That is what history is there for. It is to learn from. That is why we do not live in the Old Testament. We learn from the Old Testament. We live in that new. That said, we're going to get through 45. Division of the land. When you allot the land as an inheritance, you are to present to the Lord a portion of the land as a sacred district, 25,000 cubits long and 20,000 cubits wide. The entire area will be holy. Of this, a section, 500 cubits square, is to be for the sanctuary, with 50 cubits around it for open land. In the sacred district, measure off a section, 25,000 cubits long and 10,000 cubits wide. In it will be a sanctuary, the most holy place. It will be the sacred portion of the land for the priests, who minister to the sanctuary and who draw near to minister before the Lord. It will be a place for their houses, as well as a holy place for the sanctuary. An area 25,000 cubits long and 10,000 cubits wide will belong to the Levites, who serve in the temple as their possession for towns to live in. Verse 6. You are to give the city as its property an area 5,000 cubits wide and 25,000 cubits long. Adjoining the sacred portion, it will belong to the whole house of Israel. Verse 7, the prince will have the land bordering each side of the area formed by the sacred district, and the property eastward from the east side running lengthwise from the western to the eastern border, parallel to one of the tribal portions. This land will be his possession in Israel, and my princes will no longer oppress my people, but will allow the house of Israel to possess the land according to their tribes. Okay, so who is this prince being referred to as? According to this note, who is the prince referred to here? This is the pure and undefiled messianic king who would one day rule God's realm in justice and fairness. This is a prophetic reference to Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The people, the princes that had been there prior to this, were human princes. And they had cheated people by not keeping God's commandments and following God's laws. Okay? So this new prince, this messianic prince or king, is going to be Jesus. And Jesus is going to be the epitome of the law lived. Jesus will be the example of the lived law and will continually bring us all into that point of seeking out how to live the law, instead of teaching us how to go against God's ways and wills. Verse 9, this is what the sovereign Lord says. You have gone far enough, O princes of Israel. Give up your violence and oppression, and do what is just and right. Stop dispossessing my people, declares the sovereign Lord. You are to use accurate scales, an accurate ephah, and an accurate bath. The ephah and the bath are to be the same size. The bath containing 1/10 of a homer, and the ephah 1/10 of a homer. The homer is to be the standard measure for both. The shekel is to consist of 20 gerahs. 20 shekels plus 25 shekels plus 15 shekels equal 1 mina. So 45. Yeah, that would be 50 is a mina. Sorry, 60. My bad. Been a while. I don't know why they split it up like that. I don't know. Nobody gives that explanation. I'm sure there was a reason in that day and time why that mattered. Today, we would have been able to say 60. It would have been fine. Offerings and holy days, verse 13. This is the special gift you are to offer: 1/6 of an ephah from each homer of wheat, and 1/6 of an ephah from each homer of barley. The prescribed portion of oil measured by the bath is 1/10 of a bath from each core, which consists of 10 baths, or 1 homer, for 10 baths are equivalent to a homer. Also, 1 sheep is to be taken from every flock of 200, and the well-watered pastures of Israel. Verse 15 again. Also, 1 sheep is to be taken from every flock of 200 from the well-watered pastures of Israel. These will be used for the grain offerings, burnt offerings, and fellowship offerings. To make atonement for the people, declares the sovereign Lord. All the people of the land will participate in this special gift for the use of the prince in Israel. It will be the duty of the prince to provide the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and drink offerings at the festivals, the new moons, and the Sabbaths. At all the appointed feasts of the house of Israel, he will provide the sin offerings, grain offerings, burnt offerings, and fellowship offerings to make atonement for the house of Israel. Understand that this is saying that the prince would bring all of these offerings. Eventually, we come to understand that Jesus was the offering. The way it was supposed to go was that the king, back in the day when they started this, because again, we're going through all of this separation and this meeting out of the land and the offerings and the temple and all of that. We're going through all of that again. Remember, we just went through this in Exodus and Numbers and in Joshua, splitting up the land and recovering the land and all of that stuff. So we're having to go through it again because now they're being brought back from exile where they were cast out because they had done wrong. Because of the consequences of their choices, they were left to exile and war and plague and famine. And so now they're being returned. Well, originally, the princes, who actually became known as kings, but what we actually realize is that God was supposed to be the king over Israel. Therefore, anyone that was under God, such as David, for whatever reason, the humans decided to call David a king. God saw that as a prince. Because once again, David knew that God was in charge, but that David was under God and was there to try and bring the people together, to keep the people united. That was David's job. That was one of the many reasons that David was a man after God's own heart. That is not to say that David didn't make some serious mistakes. We already know that David made those big mistakes, and we already know that David was forgiven for those mistakes. And so, as much as it may pain us, and as much as it may have pained Bathsheba, if God forgave David, then we all have to forgive David. So, having said that, once again, what is being referred to as a prince now is actually what would have been known as a king. And we know that at that time, originally the princes were supposed to be, or the kings were supposed to be bringing all of this stuff for the offerings and making all of these offerings for everyone. But they did not do so. So, verse 18, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In the first month, on the first day, you are to take a young bull without defect and purify the sanctuary. The priest is to take some of the blood of the sin offering and put it on the doorposts of the temple, on the four corners of the upper ledge of the altar, and on the gateposts of the inner court. You are to do the same on the seventh day of the month for anyone who is unintentionally or through ignorance. So you are to make atonement for the temple. You are to do the same on the seventh day of the month for anyone who sins unintentionally or through ignorance. So you are to make atonement for the temple. Again, understand that during the feasts, the festivals, the prince is supposed to be providing all of this stuff. This is what's being taken up by way of taxes. And it's also being taken in. The first fruits are being given to the temple because they belong to God. And then you're being taking from the next level and giving that to the prince or the head of state, essentially, that is going to be then taking up. Because now we know that it's actually not going to be an Israelite king at this point. Okay? We're not going to have an Israelite king. We're going to have someone that is seated as a governor, more or less, of Israel, but they're going to be under another nation at that point. And then we get to the point where it's actually the messianic line. It becomes Jesus, and Jesus actually becomes the offering and provides the offering for everything. All of the feast offerings, all of the Sabbath offerings, all of the holy holiday offerings, all of the daily sin offerings, all of that stuff. Jesus becomes that offering. Verse 21, in the first month on the 14th day, you are to observe the Passover, a feast lasting 7 days, during which you shall not eat bread made without yeast. On that day, the prince is to provide a bull as a sin offering for himself and for all the people of the land. Every day during the 7 days of the feast, he is to provide 7 bulls and 7 rams without defect as a burnt offering to the Lord, and a male goat for a sin offering. He is to provide as a grain offering an ephah for each bull and an ephah for each ram, along with a hin of oil for each ephah. Verse 25, during the 7 days of the feast, which begins in the 7th month of the 15th day, he is to make the same provision for sin offerings, burnt offerings, grain offerings, and oil. Chapter 46, this is what the sovereign Lord says. The gate of the inner court facing east is to be shut on the 6 working days, but on the 7th day, and on the day of the new moon, it is to be opened. The prince is to enter from the outside through the portico of the gateway and stand by the gatepost. The priests are to sacrifice his burnt offering and his fellowship offerings. He is to worship at the threshold of the gateway and then go out, but the gate will not be shut until evening. On the Sabbaths and new moons, the people of the land are to worship in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the gateway. Okay, hold on a minute. Yeah. So that eastern gate, we've already had that conversation, but just in case, well, I've already mentioned it. It's not really a conversation. That eastern gate in the vision was dedicated to God because God's glory, the presence of God's glory, had come into Israel into the temple through that eastern gate, and so it was to be shut, and no one was to enter in through there except for the prince. And the prince, at this point, we're not talking about human again. We're talking about messianic. We're talking about Jesus. We're talking about that Messiah coming to save, coming to give that full holy offering and atonement. So that's what makes that eastern gate special. That eastern gate to the temple is special because that's where God's glory entered into the temple. And only the Messiah, the Prince, is going to be able to enter in through that temple. On the Sabbaths and new moons, the people of the land are to, this is, hold on, sorry. Yeah, verse 3, on the Sabbaths and the new moon, the people of the land are to worship in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the gateway. Verse 4, the burnt offering the prince brings to the Lord on the Sabbath day is to be 6 male lambs and a ram, all without defect. The grain offering given with the ram is to be an ephah, and the grain offering with the lambs is to be as much as he pleases, along with a hin of oil for each ephah. On the day of the new moon, he is to offer a young bull, 6 lambs, and a ram, all without defect. He is to provide as a grain offering 1 ephah with the bull, 1 ephah with the ram, and with the lambs as much as he wants to give, along with a hin of oil with each ephah. When the prince enters, he is to go in through the portico of the gateway, and he is to come out the same way. Verse 9. When the people of the land come before the Lord at the appointed feasts, whoever enters by the north gate to worship is to go out the south gate, and whoever enters by the south gate is to go out the north gate. No one is to return through the gate by which he entered, but each is to go out the opposite gate. The prince is to be among them, going in when they go in, and going out when they go out. Just a second. Yeah. Sorry. So that takes us to verse 11. At the festivals and the appointed feasts, the grain offering is to be an ephah with a bull, an ephah with a ram, and with the lambs as much as one pleases, along with a hin of oil for each ephah. When the prince provides a freewill offering to the Lord, whether a burnt offering or fellowship offerings, the gate facing east is to be open for him. He shall offer his burnt offering or his fellowship offerings, as he does on the Sabbath day. Then he shall go out, and after he has gone out, the gate will be shut. Give me just a moment. I'm going to look